everybody. This is Shane Claiborne. Thanks for listening to the show. Oh, if you are listening in for the first time, you're especially welcome. And there's a lot going on in the world. Far too often, many Christians have really seen faith as a way of escaping this world rather than a way of transforming it. And so this is a little different. If you've not had the best experience with religion or Christianity, you're still very, very welcome here. And there's folks of all faiths and no faith, as one of my friends says, the over-churched, under-churched, and the no-churched. And so all of you are welcome. I like to create space to have conversations with friends. I do some solo shows, but most of the time I have a guest on here. And my guest today is real interesting. I've known him for, I don't know, over a decade. And he's got a really interesting life just in general, but he also has become really well known because of his books that went viral. So, especially when the Philadelphia Eagles were reading them, folks like A.J. Brown and others were carrying it like their little pocket secret playbook on the sidelines there. And so, Jim Murphy, good to see you, my buddy. Good to see
Thank you,
you.
Shane. Thanks so much.
So, for folks of you that aren't familiar, at the playbook that won, without a doubt, won the Super Bowl. I'm just kidding, but has been really meaningful for a lot of folks, not just the Philadelphia Eagles, but so many people around the world. Inner excellence. Train your mind for extraordinary performance and the best possible life. This is Jim's book that originally, bro, when you first gave this to me, was just self-published and so lovely. And then, self-publishing's obviously not a bad thing. It's wonderful. And it got it in the hands of folks. And now you've got books everywhere. I saw it over in the airport as I was getting on a plane. But this is a new book. We'll talk about both of them a little bit. The Best Possible Life. I think I actually have the old school version before it got all spiced up and, all out there everywhere. But, hitting the New York Times bestsellers, hitting the #1 book on Amazon for a while. But beyond all the hype, just a really good brother. And we've been dreaming and scheming on some stuff we can do together in Philadelphia. Jim's been kind of traveling all over the world, but tell me what's new, man, and then we'll talk about the best possible life. But good to see you, my brother.
Well, Shane, I think starting off with your life has been someone that a life that I've dreamed about modeling. I think the Christian life is a life where you try and live like Jesus did, and that's how you've pursued your life, and it's been a real inspiration for me. I think about this quote that I put in and so here's the new version, the latest version of it. You should be getting a bunch of copies here very soon. This quote that I love, and I mentioned this before to you, but it's one of my favorite quotes, and it says, "To be a Christian is to look into the eyes of someone you don't even like and see the one you love."
Mm.
And it's such a powerful quote from a book called Rethinking Life by Shane Claiborne. So yeah, it's
Well, I think that, we're aspiring to things that we always we don't always live up to our aspirations, but it is, friends, I think, that help us keep pushing more. And you do that for a lot of people in your life of coaching and walking alongside of folks from celebrities to professional athletes to young people right here on the streets. We were walking down 8th Street over here in Kensington. Folks recognized you and your book, and I think there's a genuine desire to have some structures and some strongholds in our life that are sort of tried and true best practices, and that's what a lot of your stuff's about. So yeah, it's fun to be in it together. And we went to a Phillies game, didn't we, bro? So Jim threw out the first pitch, the opening pitch or whatever. By the way, Jim's like past his professional baseball and doing. So he knew how to throw that pass, but throw the pitch. But we got to take like 200 people from, I mean, a couple of dozen really cool Philadelphia organizations, everybody working from affordable housing and advocacy for homeless families, the Poor People's Army, to folks doing literacy like we are here at the Simple Way and Treehouse Books, and our friends just throwing great block parties and doing work with teenagers and sports leagues like Team It's just all kinds of good stuff happening. So like part of it's been cool, man, just to introduce you to some of the great stuff happening. And we don't and deliberately, I don't think we really work in silos, but we do like kind of we're in our zone, like rocking it in the neighborhood. So it's kind of fun to go and just go to a baseball game together. So I mean, maybe it's Six Flags next or something, but that was fun, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is baseball season again, so maybe we do Six Flags and another baseball game.
Yeah. And so, um, to rewind just a little bit for folks, we did a podcast, we've done a few things together over the years, but um, I think your backdrops, I mean, it's really interesting because some of your family has been involved in some of the like Anabaptist traditions, even like the some of the wilder communities, like they call them colonies, the Hutterites. So this is like, it's interesting because I think some of that primes the pump for thinking about Christianity as a way of living, not just as a way of believing. And, we're not pushing everybody to become Amish or something, but there are some things that we can learn from those things, some bones to spit out. But this idea of whole life Christianity and that we're to live differently in the world, that we're to, not be obsessed with ourselves, but to live for something bigger than ourselves. I mean, that's kind of the heartbeat of so much of your work. But tell folks a little of your own journey from I mean, whatever you want to say, but growing up to having, some family in the Hutterite community, then getting into professional sports and all that's kind of shaped you. And by the way, y'all, if you haven't read the book, they're lovely and you hear a lot of that story in the book. But give folks a snapshot, Jim.
Yeah, so I grew up to a Japanese mother and an American father that they met in Tokyo, and my dad was raised strict Catholic without a lot of love, and so we were Catholic growing up. And then he got injured and was in the hospital, and this is kind of how life works. Things that you think are really bad turn out to be really important and sometimes life changing. And so that's what happened to him and me. But he was in the hospital with an injury, and someone from work came and prayed for him, and he got healed instantly. And so he was like, "Tell me about this God."
Hmm.
And my dad's was a real very intense, like really, if he learned something, he really wants to know as much as he can about it. And so he started studying Christianity, and he's like, "Well, it seems like it should be a 7 day a week thing, and not a Sunday morning thing and a Tuesday night thing. 7 days a week." So it's like, "Is there any group that really does that, like the early Christians?" And I was 15 and a half. My dad said, "Hey, if you come with me, I'll let you drive. We're going to go check out these Hutterites. They seem to be pursuing this 7 day a week life." And so Hutterites are part of the Anabaptist group, as you mentioned, also similar to Amish and Mennonite. So they make their own clothes and live on their farmers. And everyone makes, I think, at my brother's community, $5 a month. Um, and the difference between Amish and Mennonite, I mean, Hutterite is they look somewhat similar, but Hutterites use technology, and so they have combines and things like that. Um, and so that really changed the course of my family's life. Pursuing that, my dad started a community and had 100 acres in Eastern Washington, and invited anyone to come and live with them. And then one of my brothers, Patrick, ended up joining the Hutterite community and has been there for maybe 30 years. He has 7 kids now. Um,
I got snowed in with him in the middle of a Canadian blizzard, and it was one of the coolest things ever, because we were loving hanging out. We're like, oh man, we hate to go, and then we went out and there's like, oh, we're getting pounded with a blizzard, so we just stayed overnight. Like I think we like talked half the night, and then of course there's many feet of snow or something, and they're like, no problem. We got they like paved the whole they like just plowed the whole way so we could get back to the main road. And I was just yes, but I remember that. And those communities have shaped, the simple way too. Like a lot of that, um, that history of being in the world but not of the world, trying to model ourselves after a different financial thing than just capitalism, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of these communities have almost no personal property. It's communally owned. I mean, the early church lived like that. So it's not, and I think part of what's interesting is that kind of inspires us to find who we are. You know, we're not just trying to follow a model or a sort of prototype of community, but allow the Holy Spirit to sort of guide us with new imagination with how we live in the world. So that brought back a fond memory, though, getting snowed in with your brother. So keep going, man. So yeah.
Yeah, just outside Winnipeg, Canada. And I wanted to be there so bad. I said, I can't believe Shane Claiborne's coming over for dinner and I'm not there. It's crazy.
Of course, I went in the metal shop and they're making sleds. Welding sled guy. We got to put some sleds out for tomorrow. So they're just
uh,
making them. It was awesome.
yeah, what I learned with the Hutterites, I've been visiting there for 30 years now and spent a lot of time writing these books there. Is that when we're created for relationship and community is the best way to live. I think we're created to live in community and to love and serve each other. And another big thing is you don't have to live the way the world says you should live. And I think when I was in high school, there was just so much conformity needed, just to graduate from high school. And then you have to go to college and you have to get into a good college and get a good major and all these things, that this conformity, and realizing that you don't have to live the way the world lives. And I think when we look at the Hutterite life and your life, it's two very strong examples. And I think it's just learning that we're created for a relationship, and when you put others first and seek to make a difference in the lives of others, then you can pursue that path wherever God leads you.
Yeah. And I mean, so you had the pit stop that where you were doing. So, I mean, I want to hear a little bit about your decision to do something different. You know, you didn't join the Hutterites, your brother did, but you went a different direction. You still like really um, clung to a lot of those gospel centered values, though, and it looks different for you than your brother or others. But through the professional sports and some of the relationships that you have now, I mean, the things some of the things that I know, having known you for, over a decade, that they're countercultural values, and you wouldn't think that they would necessarily hit the New York Times bestseller list, but they're also life-giving values, right? Like I often say, Jesus didn't come to give us guilt to the fullest, but to give us life to the fullest. And so we think that the more possessions we bury ourselves in, the like more life we have, but you end up just kind of suffocating and losing yourself and maintaining a bunch of stuff that doesn't really matter. And so when Jesus says things like live like the lilies and the sparrows, they don't worry so much. It is a liberating life, but it's so counterintuitive to everything that we're fed, that you can buy happiness and more stuff will make us more content. So talk a little bit about that, though, because that journey to not be, you know, the Hutterites, but also to not just aspire to be a professional athlete living for your own self, and how you
Yeah.
maintain that. Because I think a lot of these countercultural values are hard to just hold on our own, because it's kind of like we're trying to swim upstream.
Yeah, so I was obsessed about being a superstar professional athlete since I was a little kid, and then I got drafted by the Cubs and played 5 years in the minors, and I got injured and had to retire, and I was devastated. My whole identity revolved around my role as being a pro athlete, and when I lost it, I felt like I lost everything. And I got a job with FedEx and ended up moving into the desert. Just was getting really restless. What am I going to do with my life? I coached pro baseball and coaching the Olympics, and um, when that was over, I just didn't know what was next, and driving this truck. And then eventually I just decided I got a call from a teammate in pro baseball, Ricky Scruggs, and said, can you come down to the uh, Tucson, Arizona, to the desert in Tucson to help me for the weekend to launch my baseball academy. And it was at a time in my life where I just really was wanted to make a change. And so I gave away over half my possessions, moved to the desert to live a life of relative solitude. And that's where innerexcellence was born. And in that desert, what I realized is that the heart is the key to your life. When I say heart, I mean your spirit, your will, like your soul. That's the key. So that's the biggest thing I learned, is that the heart is the control center of your life. It's where your deepest fears are and greatest dreams are. And so we need to train your heart. And then along with that, I learned that self-centeredness is the biggest challenge that we face in performance and in life. And it leads to fear and every other limitation that we have. And so on the flip side of that, selflessness is fearless. And so that became the basis. So I spent 5 years full-time writing and researching inner excellence, and that became the thesis that selflessness is fearlessness, and self-centeredness is the greatest challenge that we face. And very countercultural. And so it was
Mm.
writing that book was life-changing in so many ways, because it changed my whole pursuit. I used to pursue, this worldly success, and that's what I wanted most. And what I've realized in the desert is that what I wanted most is love and acceptance and connection, to feel deep contentment, joy, and confidence every day in my life. And that's what I really, really want. And now I realize that that's also not just what I want, but my deepest need is for love and acceptance. And if I go out into the world and I don't feel that love and acceptance, I don't feel loved and connected, then I'm going to do whatever I can to try and make you like me, to try and make you think, yeah, I'm somebody. Like, Jim, you're worthy of my love. And that's with any social situation. And so I think it's so important to realize that. And so for me, I try to make sure that I soak up God's love every day, so I don't have to go into the world and try and get that love through what I call the acronym PALMS: possessions, achievements, looks, money, and status. So yeah, that's kind
So
of.
good. I keep thinking of Rich Mullins, who also was, I mean, he was a wonderful singer and songwriter. Uh, but he capped his income off at the annual income of folks around him, and he lived on a native reservation for the last part of his life, and I mean, he generated tons of money, but gave it all away. But one of the things he said is, our deepest longing is to know that we're loved. And once you figure that out, everything gets a little easier. And he also said, and until you figure that out, you can do a lot of damage in the world. You can do a lot of damage to yourself and others, just trying to show people that you're lovable and prove it in so many different ways. So, we won't name names today, but I can think of some folks that are in pretty high places of power that seem to be trying to prove that they are loved or lovable. But yeah, man. So that liberation, so many folks that you walk with have kind of felt that life. And um, you want to say about, I mean, I know that you're not a name dropper, but just some of the folks that you've got to walk beside, and they don't necessarily have to be celebrity type folks. If you just want to say a little bit about some of the people that you've um, been inspired by, and that you've also been able to speak into their life, because I know you've walked with a lot of folks, and you're not driven by money or hype, but more just by the opportunity. I mean, it's discipleship, right? In a sense, it's Jesus walked alongside people, and we're walking alongside people, and the ultimate goal is not for them to be more like us, but for all of us to be a little bit more like God and like Jesus, to be more loving and kind in the world.
Last night I was speaking to someone who has a lot of resources like that, and what I was sharing was that when I first started working with superstars and celebrities, one thing I was really shocked that they wanted more confidence, because I mostly have worked with athletes, and what I've shared with him is that confidence is great, but confidence is largely wrapped around your past. If you've been successful in something, then you feel like you can do it. If you haven't, then you don't. Whereas being fully present is more empowering than being confident. And working with the celebrities and people that are superstars, that another thing that I learned initially was that they're human, and because they're human, then there's now we've got all these different commonalities that are or similar commonalities. So they have minds that have limiting thoughts and um, uh, negative thoughts and limiting beliefs, and get over analyzing and feel self-consciousness and what do people think of me, and it doesn't matter how much celebrity or money they have, they still walk into a room and can feel self-conscious, like what do people think of me, how do I fit in, because it's our deepest need, and having more resources doesn't really change that. And so
Mm,
I think in the end it's really understanding that there's a you were put on this earth for a reason, and right now there's so much fear and hopelessness. When you stare at your circumstances, then it can be very, very scary, and watch the news and look at what the world's happening in the world. But I also think there's this rule of life that I've always kind of tried to live by, is that I want to be ready to fully live at a moment's notice, and also give up my life at a moment's notice. Fully live meaning to fully experience a great moment, or really connect with wisdom. So whether it's an 8-year-old or an 88-year-old or a homeless person, to really connect with that and really be ready to give up my life at a moment's notice. And
mm,
something we haven't talked about is on January 8th of this year, I flew to Spain, to Istanbul, to get
mm,
um, to do some research for clients on this clinic of where you can get tested in all these different areas of your health. And so it was really just research. I had no symptoms. And then January 20th, I was diagnosed with cancer. And
mm,
so that was a very, and thyroid cancer.
mm,
And so that was anytime you get diagnosed with cancer, it's kind of a big thing. And for 2 weeks, I scrambled. I mean, for 2 days, I was really just like trying to come to grips with it. Am I ready to die? Is this, could that happen?
mm,
When will I be ready to die, when the time comes? And then God did all these miracles that 2 days later, one of the guys that had done an innerexcellence retreat named Kelly. He's CEO of a company called Hill Point Real Estate. He sets me up with a clinic in Florida, flies me there in his private jet, and pays for the surgery. I get surgery done within 2 weeks. There's no pain whatsoever. Miracle after miracle. And so that was just that was in February 3rd. I had the surgery, so just about 2 months ago.
mm, mm,
Um, and so that another miracle, really, in my life, that God's done, that I'm so grateful for.
mm. Well, I've been thinking of you and yeah, praying for you and excited to hang out again soon in Philly when you get over this way. We got a couple minutes left, and I was thinking when I read a book these days, I get a lot of books. When you write books, you get people giving you books a lot, and so I get a lot of books. But now instead of going to the front to see the table of contents, I go to the back to look at the sources cited and the people that have poured into their writing, that they cite through it because it gives you a little sense of the folks that have shaped and formed it. So you're forming, helping shape a lot of lives. But um, I'd love you to say a little bit about some of the cloud of witnesses that um, continue to shape your spirituality and to that you draw wisdom from as you share it with others, because you're not kind of just thinking of this all out of the blue, on your own, but you're building on a rich tradition of hundreds of years old, practicing love and faith and joy and resistance.
Yeah, Tim Keller and Daryl Johnson are two that I've always thought of as kind of the primary, outside of my family, the greatest teachers of my life. And funny story is that Tim Keller, went to heaven about 2 years ago, and so I ran up, met up with Daryl Johnson. And I said, "There's been these two teachers, and Tim, as you know, is in heaven now, so no pressure. But you're it, Dr. Johnson." And so he's become a great mentor of mine. So I listen to Tim Keller's sermons multiple times a week. Daryl Johnson and Tyler Staton are two others that I listen to the most.
Yeah. And what's on the horizon now as you're kind of continuing to find your way in this new space where you're getting pulled a lot of directions, but tell me what's going on the horizon,
Well,
man.
so this book that just came out last week, the
Yeah.
republished edition of Best Possible Life, it's a book on the Christian life, and so my life has been mostly coaching, performance coaching with professional athletes and executives, and now that I have a book on the Christian life, so now there's going to be more Best Possible Life retreats. We're going to have those on what it means to be a Christian and how that is the best possible life and how you can feel fully alive through the path of sacrificial love and living like Jesus. I'm working on an innerexcellence workbook, and so that is going to come out, and God willing, will be out in November. It's called the 90-day challenge, and so
Mm.
that's another one of the big projects I'm working on.
So good. So we're going to keep talking, y'all, for the podcast. But those of you listening to the radio show, thanks for tuning in. Our guest has been Jim Murphy, I mean, just a wonderful friend in person, and also the best-selling author of Inner Excellence and the new book, just freshly published, The Best Possible Life. So check it out. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Shane.
Okay, so we can talk a little bit more for the podcast. So we've been dreaming and scheming in Philly, man. I know you've like already part of this, y'all, for is when you go from having a book that's getting out there, that's touching lives. It's always a gift, whether it's one person or millions. But then your book, really went viral. You have been investing in and supporting a lot of great work, including a bunch of the stuff that we're a part of in Philly. We're turning abandoned houses into homes for families with simple homes. You've supported our community at the Simple Way with as we're building this literacy center and library, and we're um, melting down guns, and you've helped us renovate the building where we get guns off the street and turn them into garden tools. So tell us some of the other stuff that you're excited to support. I mean, some of it I might not even know, but I mean, I think Philly's one of the hubs, but you've got some cool stuff kind of happening all over the place now.
Yeah, we're dreaming about getting an inner excellence retreat center, potentially in Texas. And the retreat center would be a place where we have best possible life and inner excellence retreats, but also take in orphan people, animals, immigrants, people that in need, and provide tangible services and love for them. That's part of the big dream. And
Sounds kind
also,
of Franciscan, Francis was taking care of people for, obviously, but then also started just taking care of a little bit of every creature, and so you might have your own little desert monastic community down there, huh?
yeah, I hope so. And the prayer is that in the book, in the Bible, and in Best Possible Life, it talks about that Jesus had a real. There's 5 groups of people that he really kind of singled out as really important to love, and that's widows and orphans and immigrants and the poor and the imprisoned. And I did an inner excellence retreat at or workshop at a prison in 2019, and it was the most grateful group that I ever worked with. And then
Mhm.
COVID hit, and we haven't been able to get back since. But and I mentioned this to you briefly, I think, in an email I'd love to go to visit some of the inmates in Nashville. I think because I think some of
Yeah.
them on death row, and
I'm
so
actually, yeah, I was just texting with it. I mean, it's kind of a liaison, a friend that visits every week with the guys at Unit 2, and that'd be really powerful to get in there. I've, been going for 10 years. Took my friend Propaganda. He's a, poet and artist, and he did a few songs inside. We've um, had a few different authors go there, and yeah, it'd be fun just to hang out. I mean, and also those guys have um, shown me faith and redemption and transformation. So every time I go, I'm shaped as much as anything I would give or offer. So I know you've experienced that so much. So yeah,
you
man.
also know a hero of mine, Brian Stevenson, and so someone who I've followed for a long time and hope to be able to connect with at some
Have you
point.
been down there to the EJI, the Equal
Not yet,
Justice
not
Initiative?
yet. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, you got to get down there. In fact, some of the stuff we're installing in the Peacemaker space here, um, at least my imagination has been provoked by the amazing work down in Montgomery and um, the we were down there when it was really a dream, and he felt the spirit. We kind of prayed over that land, because one of the things that they discovered is that their law offices, as they're defending, folks that were wrongfully convicted, folks that were young and had excessive punishment and all their great work, much of it pro bono. Their building of the law offices was where people were enslaved and held before they were auctioned
Wow.
on the corner of like Commerce Street or whatever. So they, reimagined their whole space and have now, the Legacy Museum and the Peace and Justice Memorial, all the different spaces that they've created there. So we even went out to, the site of one of the places where someone was lynched, where the kind of racial terror of lynching happened, and we gathered the soil that now there's, hundreds of jars there that have the soil where people were killed
Mm,
um, by white supremacists, kind of racially fueled terrorism, really. And that 3,000, now it's almost 4,000 names of people that many of us didn't know the names of those who were lynched, and we didn't even have a lot of data on it. So they've been gathering all that. Yeah, man, I was actually with Brian just last week at
oh,
brother
wow.
John, brother John Perkins passed away, and he's been one of my mentors. He's the son of a sharecropper, and his mother died of starvation when he was born, and he was, man, he was pushing 100. I think he was 90 something.
Wow.
So we got to be there together. I got to see Brian and spend a little time together. So yeah, man, so much good stuff happening. So the last thing I thought I would ask you is, I mean, almost daily there's new horrors that are, happening in the country and the world. We've got communities that are regularly threatened by ICE raids. So when you think about, the widows and the orphans and welcoming the stranger and how we, entertain angels as we take care of the foreigner, like I mean, countless texts of scripture and that talk about how much God loves those who are vulnerable. Um, and now the escalation of violence in Lebanon, Iran, I mean Gaza. So I thought I'd ask you a little bit about joy and how you protect it and how you sort of actually one of the lines of Brian Stevenson, protect your joy. He talks about that and how
Mm.
we have to be really deliberate to not. I think of the old song, this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me, and the world can't take it away. Sometimes it's easier to sing that though than it is to practice it. So, how do you protect your joy and your hope right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I define joy as a deep sense of well-being, freedom, and gratitude, and inner buoyancy and delight that comes from sacrificial
Mm,
love, as opposed to happiness, which is I define as a positive temporary feeling based on what's happening. And to me, joy is the pillar for self-control. And protecting my joy is such a powerful, important thing. And I love that phrase. I haven't heard it before. Um, it's kind of like, I think when I think of protecting my joy, it makes me think of walking like Jesus walked.
mm,
Jesus knew that he came from God and was going back to God and remembering that. And so he loved everyone to the end, and, the disciples and everybody. And I think if you realize and think, am I willing to give up my life? And because if you're clinging to your circumstances and just wanting them to get better, well, they may not get better, and the world may not get better, and it's there could be untold horrors that happen, and if you're clinging to your life, then you're going to lose it 1,000 times before you actually die.
mm.
Whereas if you're find something that you're willing to sacrifice your life for and have a cause that's far greater than yourself, then you can have that joy. And even if you're losing everything else.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to have an excuse to hang out and talk. So, thanks for listening, everybody. Uh, Make sure you check out Jim's new book, The Best Possible Life: How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence No Matter What. And come hang out with us in Philly sometime, the city of love, where Jim is loving this city and we love him. So thanks, buddy, for a little time today. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much for having me, Shane.